I'm a recently turned 40-year-old male. Was with the ex for 8 years. She was married for 7 of them. She was already divorced once when we got married, and she was my first marriage. In a nutshell, I emotionally withdrew from her, not really on purpose. She gaslighted me into believing I was a total piece of crap and that something is seriously wrong with me when we separated. Even though I have a good job, make more money than she does, and have been objectively proven to be a more balanced personality and emotions through testing we both did with a counselor a few years back. So through recent counseling, I learned this isn't the case. I'm not just some emotionally unavailable prick with attachment issues. Rather, she isn't very trustworthy, and without trust, there is no emotional intimacy. So no wonder I withdrew emotionally. It was a defense mechanism. And of course, emotional neglect is devastating to the heart of a woman, and so she feels that I left her a long time ago, which I think is a fair point. Ultimately, she had enough feeling this way. Obviously no introspection of how she may have contributed to or caused this crap in the first place, and eventually took me to task on it all, which culminated in asking for a separation and saying she wants a divorce. I knew something was up with her for the 2 months leading up to the blow-up, but I could never get her to tell me. So I just kept living my daily life. I found out a month after we separated that she had been having an at least emotional affair with a married guy. I called her out on it in early January of 2021. Caught her completely flat-footed. She tried to lie about it at first, but I made it apparent that I had evidence, and then she finally owned up to it. Though she still tried to say that, because nothing physical happened, it wasn't really cheating. What a C-word. And of course, this permanently solidified to me that in fact she really wasn't to be trusted. So my feelings of distrust were well justified as she proved once and for all. In the past, it would be small things. But as any married person knows, small things add up. For example, I tell her something in confidence, or we'd discuss something that was to stay between the two of us, and she would blab it to someone else. This wasn't just a mistake she made once or twice. It was a pattern of behavior. And for my part, I was drinking too much and smoking pot. It never affected my work. I always kept a good job during our whole marriage and made pretty good money. I am good at my job, and providing financially was never a problem, nor did we ever argue about money. However, the drinking did make me more difficult to be around. I stopped drinking and smoking pot in December, and I'm still sober to this day. Hallelujah. Now, in hindsight, I can see things I couldn't see when I was in the middle of the storm. 2 to 3 years ago, the ex-wife's sister was having an affair behind her husband's back. This poor guy, and still is, the epitome of a doormat. I was always under the impression that her side of the family was trying to mold me into a house pet like that poor sap, which I never succumbed to. But I digress. Sister told the ex-wife of the affair in confidence, as if it were not that big of a deal. His wife was apoplectic, very upset, very disturbed. The night she learned of the affair, she confided in me regarding what to do, if anything. During that conversation, which lasted probably 2 hours, we discussed infidelity in general, but also the variants of infidelity. I remember crystal clear that we also discussed emotional affairs in particular, and both agreed that emotional affairs were also adultery. I also made it abundantly clear that in my view, any such infidelity, physical or otherwise, was grounds for divorce. But at such a point, the trust is gone and can never be rebuilt. I remember saying that I would never be able to trust again a woman who did such a thing, and I meant it when I said it. So if she didn't know my position on it before, she damn sure knew my position on it after the conversation. Fast forward to fall of 2020. She's feeling emotionally neglected. You know what happened then? This jack-off, who has a wife, is giving her the validation she wants and needs. But here's what I realized in hindsight. This wife has always been terrible at keeping secrets and even worse at lying. She would always claim that lying is wrong, even small white lies. Not that she was wrong in this assertion. Though, now I wonder if her aversion to lying was more due to her inability to do it effectively as opposed to an actual moral conviction. In any case, throughout our marriage, if something was bothering her, I could always tell. Always. I can't tell you how many times I had a conversation with her that went like, "Hey, what's wrong, honey?" "Nothing." "I can tell." "Are you going to make this like pulling teeth? Or are you just going to tell me now?" "You know, I'll eventually get to the bottom of it. So let's just skip the BS and get to the truth of the matter." I was never wrong when I could tell something was up. Never. So, at some point, she crosses the line into emotional fair territory. Or who knows, perhaps even physical. She knows she can't hide it from me forever. I will sniff it out eventually because, again, I always do. Always. Even if she wanted to repent and admit to it, even if she wanted to repair the marriage, she has in the back of her mind the conversation we had a couple years back. She knows my position on this crap without any doubt. So, she has only so many choices at that point. 1. Come clean with it before I find out on my own and hope that I have it in my heart to absorb that pain and work through it with her as opposed to me divorcing her ass. She's thinking, fat chance on this because, again, my position was made clear previously. Her facade of her reputation is also forever sullied. 2. Come clean with it before I find out on my own and divorce me. But then, her facade of her reputation is sullied. 3. Hide it and either stay married while continuing the affair or stay married and end the affair. This is problematic, however, because she can't keep secrets, is a crappy liar, and I will eventually sniff out anything that seems off. So, in this scenario, she eventually ends up in scenario number 1 or number 2 above anyhow. Number 4, knowing that I will eventually sniff it out and assuming that I would divorce her when I did. Her only other choice is to beat me to it. She sure as hell wasn't going to be the one filed on, especially not for adultery, be it emotional or otherwise. Remember, she has a facade of her reputation to uphold as some pure moral, honest, Christian woman. So, throw a bunch of crap against the wall, gaslight the living crap out of me, and hope that at least some of it sticks. Have me carry the entire burden of the marriage's failure on my shoulders for the rest of my life. The way is the victim, make me the villain, and keep her secrets safe for the rest of her life. Basically, she attempted to carry out a false flag on her own marriage, and so she chose number 4. But she couldn't count on the fact that I am, and always have been, smarter than she is. I was a little late to the party, but it's only because I was in denial. Her face said it all in early December when I asked if she cheated on me. I just didn't dig into it until January. I was preoccupied with trying to move all my crap and figure out the logistics of my next move. Her attempt to carry out that plan is despicable as, if not worse than, the infidelity itself. As they say, the cover-up is often worse than the crime. Adjustment and healing from December to the end of February. I stayed with my parents an hour away. My birthday is in December, and obviously there's Christmas. Needless to say, this was the worst birthday and Christmas of my life. I turned 40, which is supposed to be a big celebration. A lot of folks have a hard time accepting the big 4 to 0 anyhow. And for me, it was even more difficult given the situation. I couldn't eat much of anything for the vast majority of December. I started to get my appetite back towards the end of December, but then, when I discovered the affair, it set me right back again. Regardless, I supplemented my meals with high-density protein shakes and hit the gym every day in the morning before work. I pushed through that crap. It was not easy. I worked from home, so luckily I didn't have to drive to an office. Also, December is a pretty low month at my job, which worked out perfectly because I could not concentrate much on all of my work anyhow. It was also very tough to concentrate when things picked back up in January. But I was getting better, if ever so slightly. Still, what a mind job. Easily the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and the worst thing anyone has ever done to me. Now, keep in mind, I have been going to counseling since early December, and still was. By the end of May, I had been through 3 counselors. I can't stress this enough. People, go to counseling. Seriously, it will help you. If you go to someone and don't feel it's helping, move on to someone else. But whatever you do, go talk to someone. You need to, in order to maintain even a bare minimum amount of mental health. In my case, the first counselor was helpful until he wasn't. Once I gathered that there was nothing more I was getting from him, I moved on. Each one of them had something to offer, each a bit different. But they all contributed to my processing and healing. I had decided that despite the affair, I would do everything I could to save the marriage. I guess I'm just loyal and value the commitment. I didn't ultimately work, but at least I can say I did everything I could. I did not date until after the finalization. For me, I was not going to stoop to her level. I was not going to return infidelity with infidelity. As much as it pained me, I wore my ring until the very last day. For those of you who are atheist or agnostic, I'm not looking to debate philosophy or theology. So skip this part if you want. Just know you are entitled to your beliefs. But so am I. Okay? Okay. The thing that helped me the most was God. Hands down. I did not have the mental strength of my own to carry on through this storm, but somehow He provided it, although at the time, it didn't always necessarily feel like it. A few years ago, I bought a very short book entitled 3 Easy Steps to Emotional Healing. I don't remember why I even bought it, but I had never read it previously. One night in late January or early February, I remembered that I had packed it with a few things which I didn't put into storage, so I had it with me. I broke it out and read it in one sitting. Without getting too much into the details, I asked my parents to facilitate while I went through the steps outlined in the book. It was extremely painful to go through them, extremely, but I can't properly articulate the amount of healing I received from doing it. It was miraculous, I tell you. Much like the pain of having a bullet dug out from your body, it did hurt, and there were many, many bullets, but we dug them out one by one, and the Lord took each one and nursed the wounds one by one. I probably received as much healing in an hour and a half as most people would get in a year, or possibly more. I don't know what else to say except it might have been the single best thing I did for myself, and one of the greatest things God has done for me in my life. In late February, I decided it was time to move back to my original city. I had contemplated before if I even wanted to live there anymore. Again, I can theoretically live anywhere I want so long as there is an internet connection, because I work remotely even before COVID. But wherever I was to live, I was afraid to live by myself and afraid to not have emotional support so close as I had enjoyed for the previous 2 or 3 months. I feared what it would be like living in a place where I spent my married life. Would I break down in tears every time I drove past a place that triggered a memory, of which there were many places and many memories? This was a big question. I decided that I would not allow her or the situation to rob me of a place I loved. It would only be a haunted place if I allowed it to be. I knew that it may be tough, but I also knew the only way to deal with it would be to face it head on. If I wasn't going to face it head on, it would always be a haunted place. Ultimately, I said F that. I will not be a victim to this situation. And so I moved back, closer to the lake where I love to fish. I am only a couple of miles from my old home where the ex still lives. Guess what? I don't give AF. That's what. I am stoic AF.
Divorce care.
If you haven't heard of it yet, you likely will. If you want to know more about it, Google it, as I'm not going to take the time to explain what it is beyond saying it's a national faith-based divorce support group. So at the advice of others, I decided to sign up for it. The lady running it was nice enough, but man, she talked a lot. The first and only night I went, there were 5 people total. The woman who ran it and her husband, myself, a woman with kids who was going through a divorce, and a guy with kids who was going through a divorce. Oh, I forgot to mention, I have no kids. Thank God, as this would have made my situation much more difficult. I am not going to bash the program. A lot of folks say it helped them immensely, so I will not take away from that, and I am glad it helped them. However, I didn't feel it was for me, and I'll tell you why. I walked out feeling worse than when I walked in. From the very beginning, it was drilled into us that the next 6 months to a year of your life is going to be sheer hell. I'm paraphrasing, but that was pretty much the gist. In my personal opinion, I simply don't appreciate that sort of negative crap being prophesied over my life. As the Bible says, life and death is in the power of the tongue. I had fought so hard up to this point for my mental health, with God's help, that I was not about to let that just be undone by some people who I don't even know and who were supposed to be helping me. Yes, things were tough, and no doubt I was still going to be dealing with some things. It's not that I was in denial, but I also have a choice. I can choose to wallow in sadness or misery for the next 6 or 12 months or more, or I can choose to fight and move on. I'm not here to tell you that you can skip the grieving and the negative emotions. You can't. You will feel that crap, but you can choose whether or not you will allow it to completely dominate your life. You can choose to wallow in the mud puddle or to move through it to the other side. I made a choice that I was not going to wallow in that crap and that I was not going to allow anyone to facilitate me wallowing in it. Understand, I am not saying that I avoided or buried my feelings. I didn't. I allowed myself to feel and cry and all that. I still do sometimes, but I am moving forward. Now, on to the present day. Moving on and dating again. I'm not here to tell any of you to begin dating now or later. It's not my place. I do believe that the right time is potentially different for everyone. As I stated earlier, I would not date until the divorce was final, and I cited moral reasons. But the truth is that even had I not had my moral code, I still wasn't ready. Knew I wasn't ready, and didn't even want to date before it was final, because emotionally, I was still too much of a wreck anyhow. My self-confidence was destroyed for one thing. Being cheated on really does a number on the victim. It eviscerates the soul. The one person who you were supposed to be able to trust the most F's you over in the worst, most intimate way. It's like, if there's just one thing we all agreed to when we get married, the faithless, the one thing you don't do, she did. And I had my own opportunities to cheat as well, and I could have justified it to myself as well. But I never would have done such a thing, and never did. So yes, I can say I am a better person than she. And ultimately, she did me a solid by saving me from a marriage to someone who I couldn't trust. So there's that. I already had 8 years of my life stolen. Why would I want another 8 stolen? Or 10? Or 20? Or 30? So the divorce was final in the beginning of March 2021. I had only been in my new place for like a week or two. Though we were legally done, there was still some loose ends to be tied up. Health insurance, taxes, a shared bank account. I had opened my own account earlier on, but we still had one account with both our names on it to move money to one another for things like mutual bills and end-of-year taxes, etc. Some people in my life told me I should wait 6 months to a year to date. Incidentally, the vast majority of those people had never actually been through a divorce, much less a divorce where they were the victims of infidelity. Funny how that works, isn't it? I guess if they read enough blog posts, they know what they're talking about. And then some people told me that the sooner I get back on the horse, the better. While I did listen to both sides, I do think that any given piece of advice is likely appropriate for someone somewhere. It's really on a case-by-case basis. It depends on the person. There is no one-size-fits-all rule of thumb in my opinion. I ultimately made my choice based on how I felt, not how anyone else did. I didn't feel it was fair for me to be replaced in the penalty box. I wasn't the one who cheated for sake. And why should I? So I could satiate some other people's concerns. I knew that I was intellectually honest enough to know if I really wasn't ready because I knew I wasn't ready in January. Yes, I contemplated it despite my own moral objections. So it's not like I would lie to myself. I'm also 40 years old. I know what I want. I don't need to find myself, or whatever. The woman I thought I had in my marriage was not the woman I had. The woman I wanted was not the woman I had. So I decided to find the woman I wanted. I'm only getting older and time is a valuable commodity. So why wait if I really felt I was ready? Within a week of the finalization, I got on 4 dating sites simultaneously. Pretty soon I was texting with multiple women. I think I had my first date within 2 weeks. Then another. The second date was with a really great woman. Very attractive, great personality, and we really clicked well. At this point, I'm juggling conversations with 10 or 12 women. It took me about a week to get my mojo back. Remember, I hadn't dated in 8 years. Then I had a date with a third woman, still juggling double digits on the text phone, filling them out. They're filling me out. So the third woman I went out with, I'll get back to her. But we're exclusive and just celebrated a 2-month anniversary 2 days ago. She's really fantastic. When I first began dating, I assumed that many, if not most, women would not likely want to date me having to come out of a divorce finalization less than a month prior. I knew this was a likely possibility going into it. However, I just said, EFF it. Let's find out. And boy, did I. Yes, they had questions as they should have. I just told the truth about all of it. I was an open book, and I own my own faults and failings. I didn't put everything on her. The truth is that yes, there were things I did wrong in the relationship, but I learned from them. And also, where she cheated, I never did, although I had ample opportunity in the past. Come to find out, the fact that I had been in counseling the whole time and was still going seemed to be a big turn-on for them. I can't tell you how many times I heard, "That's so great that you're going to counseling. Most guys would never do that." And also, "Wow, you're really resilient. This has a lot about you, and that you're doing so well." You're obviously a very strong person. These were things I heard both during in-person dates and over messaging. It didn't hurt that the ex and I had already been separated for 3 to 4 months at that point. Yeah, the divorce wasn't legal until March, but the separation occurred long before that. And again, I was able to say that I was faithful until the end, that I didn't even attempt to date until it was final. This also bought me a lot of credit with the ladies. Even though my ex was a classless whore, I didn't use that as an excuse to stoop to her level. I was a class act and maintained that the whole way through, despite the awful transgressions against me. Out of like 15 to 20 women, there was only one who wouldn't date me because I was so fresh out of a divorce, and it had nothing to do with me. She had her own issue with having been used as a rebound several times in her past, so she was justifiably scared. I have to say, those dates and interactions with women were the best I've ever had in my life. I'm not sure if it's just that I had matured so much since I was in my early 30s, or what exactly. Though I will say that somehow, someway, I was more confident in myself on those dates. I'm still not entirely sure why or how, especially considering what had happened. But I have a theory. Basically, the absolute worst thing that could happen in a relationship already happened to me. So what did I have to fear? I'd already lived through it, and I'm still standing, right? And I'm here at this restaurant having dinner with this gorgeous woman who was effing the living crap out of me. So hey, why shouldn't I be confident? To this day, it's still crazy to me. The alleged love of my life, I think, cheats on me. You'd expect me to be curled up in a fetal position, disgusted with myself and wanting to die. Not that I hadn't felt that way at some point, and for some time prior. But I was proving to myself that the adulterous, fire-breathing Banzu from hell doesn't get to define who I am or what I'm worth. No one does, except for me and God. She only gets to influence my life to the degree that I allow it, and I ain't allowing it. No effing way. So if any of you are concerned about the idea that no one wants to date you soon after a divorce, don't be so sure. But do take the time to get counseling, process your crap, and do the work to heal. And it is work. Make no mistake. But it pays off. Granted, I'm not 100% healed, even now. Some things just take time. But that would also be a ridiculous expectation at this juncture anyhow. What I do know is that I am way more healed than many, if not most people, who went through similar crap at this point in the timeline. Again, I credit God, I credit myself, and I credit those who make up my support system, family and close friends. I leaned on God, and I also did the work to expedite my healing. I wasn't passive. I didn't just wait until I felt better. I did things to make myself feel better. So the date with the third girl. By the time that date was through, I was smitten. At the advice of a female friend, I still went on another date or two with the second girl. I was surprised that I found someone who I felt I clicked with better than the second one. She would have been difficult to beat, and I had fully intended and expected to be dating a while, and dating many women before I landed on one which I would have wanted to be with exclusively. But it just happened the way it happened. I know what I want, what I'm looking for, and I found it much faster than I anticipated. Sure, this all has to play out and who knows how things will end up for sure. But so far, man, all I can say is wow. This relationship is already 10 times better than the relationship with my ex ever was, even early on when we first dated and married. All told, I met the woman who I am currently with within the same month that my divorce was finalized. I'm still shocked that it played out that way, but it did. And she's hotter than my ex-wife. The comms wall overtures by the ex and taking power back. As I previously mentioned, there were still some loose ends to be tied up: taxes, shared bank account, health insurance. The ex and I were still communicating over email, over necessary things. What I didn't realize is that this afforded her more than her a fair share of the power dynamic. Also, it wasn't healthy for me to keep talking to her at a mere fundamental level anyway. One of my best friends is an attorney. Something I didn't used to appreciate but now do is that attorneys are highly trained in much more than just the law. Things like human behavior, psychology, and negotiation are also big parts of their schooling. So my buddy had incidentally been through the exact same scenario before as me. The only difference was that they weren't married, but everything else was the same. The relationship was 8 years long. He withdrew emotionally, and then she began cheating, etc. All the same. He and I were fishing together one day, as we often do, and we spent several hours on the lake together. In talking about my situation, he mentioned a couple of interesting things. One was that despite her being the one who filed for divorce, she would eventually reach back out to me, and not for a necessary reason or reasons. I balked at this. She was the one who won her divorce, and clearly she was preoccupied with someone else anyhow. Secondly, he said that I should no longer talk to her at all. Rather, he suggested I have an intermediary in place. So as she needs to communicate with me, she communicates to the intermediary, and the intermediary communicates to me, and then back to her. She's not allowed to talk to me anymore. Basically, and more interestingly, number 2 would likely facilitate number 1, at least according to him. So it ended up that he would serve as the intermediary. The first order of business was to notify her, but of the new arrangement. I also didn't want her to know my address, but there were some items I had left behind when I moved out that I needed mailed to me. And also, I would want a copy of the tax return once it was filed. We filed jointly for 2020, so she was told to just mail all that crap to my parents' address, and they would get it to me. Now, I don't exactly know what her motives were, but she began making these altruistic overtures shortly thereafter. There are likely only a few possibilities, and it could be any combination of them. 1. She just wants to know or believe that she could have me back for the sake of her own ego. 2. She wants to test the waters because she's now feeling the loss of the relationship and genuinely wants to repair it. 3. She has bothered the things were left where she is the piece of crap who cheated, and she doesn't like that me, my family, my friends, and some of our friends in common have a negative view of her. She's hoping for even the slightest of positive responses so that she can feel better about herself and thinking that I don't think she's a piece of crap. That effing chance. 4. My sudden flipping of the script and cutting her off from comms threw her for a loop, and the idea that I'm not just available to email whenever she wants is effing with her mind or ego. And perhaps even some others that I haven't thought of. Whatever. In any case, it's healthier for me, and that's all I care about. It's also helpful for my new relationship, for my woman to know that I ain't talking to that witch anymore. So since cutting off comms, here's what happened. Before the divorce was final, I had indicated that I'd like to take the 2 male cats with me. We had 3 cats, 2 males and a female. The males are arguably closer to me, and the female would tolerate me but really loved her the most. Yeah, I guess cats are sexist? I don't know. Anyway, she made sort of a stink about the idea of me taking the 2 males, even though she had previously said I could take any cats I wanted. So I said, EFF it. I just let her have them. It was painful. I had to emotionally detach from them when I moved my crap out in December, but I had to do what I had to do. Now, she emails my lawyer friend and offers me the 2 males out of nowhere. Her reason is that she's not home enough to give them the attention they deserve. Problem with that logic, though, is that the 2 males are fine. They play with one another all the time. They're joined at the hip. They have one another. If any of those cats are being deprived of attention, it's the poor female who pretty much hates the other cats and only really loves the ex-wife. Yet, that's not the cat she offered. Makes no sense. At least not according to her reasoning. Now, as much as I would have liked to take my 2 boys, I had to think of possible repercussions. One is that my girlfriend is allergic to cats. 2. I don't want to give the ex a reason to reach out in the future. Grab like asking me, how are the cats? Whenever she feels like it. Or even worse, deciding she changed her mind and wanting them back. Also, I'm not really big on having reminders in my past life roaming around my new life. Lawyer writes her back and says, he's not interested. A couple of weeks later, she emails him and sends the login for me to claim my frequent flyer miles, which frankly, I forgot about, don't care about, and never asked for. And then, a couple of weeks ago, instead of emailing him, she emails me directly. This time, she's saying that she would like to send me the taxes that I had previously requested. She says that even though I had previously requested her to send that crap to my parents to dress, there are some other items which also came for me in the mail. And so, if I'll just send her my address, she'll mail them to me directly, so that my parents won't have to then send it to me. Really? Just send it all to my parents. I've already told you this. Now, obviously, the reason I'm having her send crap to my parents is precisely because I don't want her knowing where I live. I don't want her popping up at my door. I don't want to knock at my door to find 2 cats being left there for me, or whatever else could possibly happen. She also requested that I set up mail forwarding. Obviously, the only thing that needed to be said was, "Can you please set up mail forwarding?" And it should have been sent to my lawyer buddy instead of to me directly. So, I had him reply to her, reiterating that she should send anything intended for me to the address that we already told her to send things. Now, on social media, her and I haven't been connected since late November, although she was still connected to my family and friends even after the divorce. Not only that, the awful heartbeat also still had pictures of her and I, including our wedding photos, all up in her profile page. Now, you might say, well, maybe she just hasn't been on social media, so she hasn't removed that stuff because of that reason. Well, she got on social media in late February. Update 1. Suddenly, it doesn't sting so much anymore. It doesn't sting so much, if at all. This started last week and I was wary of it. I'd felt like this before, or maybe a day or two at best. I kept thinking, let's see how long this lasts before I get too excited. But for the last, almost week, it just doesn't carry the charge that it did. I still think she sucks and all, but I just, well, cared a lot less. Many of the same thoughts enter that always did, but I'm just like, meh. I don't think this has anything to do with my girlfriend either. I identified her as a better woman from the first date, and she's only become more so since then. It's been almost 4 months with her now. She is hotter, smarter, more mature emotionally, and a better lover. Even knowing this, the past still stung. But right now, it hasn't really stung in many days. Just updating you all, I'm happy, but also hope someone out there finds solace in knowing that it is possible to feel better. Perhaps it's just a matter of time? Update 2. For those of you who saw my previous posts months ago, I was toying with the idea of outing my now ex-wife to her family, namely her parents. Many of you told me to do it. Many of you told me not to. I think I'm going to. I haven't taken any eventual acts against her, and some people in my life have told me that to out her, to them, is nothing less than vengeful. To that I say, if I was wanting to be truly vengeful, I'd do a hell of a lot more than just tell her parents. For me, I just feel like my silence is essentially covering up for her in a crime not just against me, but against everyone who attended our wedding, or even sent us well wishes, which would necessarily include her parents. And then, there's the fact that she concocted a story as to why we got divorced in surprise. It was of course all my fault. Nope, F that. Right now, it's been almost 7 months since the divorce was finalized. I feel that in waiting so long, I have given myself enough time to be able to communicate the truth without it being purely vengeful. I got a new girlfriend within 2 weeks of the finalization, and I'm still with her. She is finally me outing the witch to her parents, so no problems there. For those of you who are concerned about it, I am not attaching my feelings to anything I can't control here, namely the reaction, whatever it will be, from her family. I don't care what they think, or with the truth after I give it to them. I only care that they know the truth. As for those of you who say, they won't believe you, well, I recorded the phone conversation where I first confronted the ex-wife and she admitted to the emotional affair. I was never able to prove a physical affair, but there's enough circumstantial evidence that points to that as well. In any case, there was infidelity and it was enough significance to end not only our marriage, but that of the affair partner as well. I intend to include this phone recording when I send the message to her parents. And yes, the recording was legal. None of this means I won't get some blowback. I very well may. I'm to the point now where I'm not scared and don't care. They can do no worse to me than what she already did anyhow. If anything, she should worry that I'll broadcast the truth to a wider audience. I have no plans to do this, but if any of them F with me, they may very well wish they hadn't. Anyhow, I'll report back after having done it. I know there are those of you who, like I was, are curious as to if you should out your wayward spouse or not. I asked people in this sub if they felt better or worse after having done it, and it was a mixed bag. I gather that the folks who regretted outing their wayward spouse to the in-law family also had expectations attached to the reactions of those people. I will not make that mistake. Anyhow, I'll report back on what happens, if anything. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do it, but it will be soon. My attorney friend suggests sending an actual physical letter. I'll probably take his advice. Otherwise, I'm doing much better than I was. This whole thing is a process, and for me, I think I've come to the conclusion that I need to tell them for my own closure. Perhaps it's selfish, but I am past giving it F. I am thinking about me now, at her, and what she thinks or wants. I am not obligated to protect her reputation. If it bothers her for her parents to know, then she can be mad at herself, or even me. I don't care. If anything, she's lucky I haven't done worse, and as of now, I don't plan to. Those of you who are at the beginning, all I can say is hang in there. I wanted to off myself for the first 3 months. That's the truth, but I didn't. There's a future for you after all of this. There is life afterwards. I got a new woman quickly, which many people thought was a bad idea. I think that depends on the person. I was ready for the next thing, somehow. But if you're not ready to date yet, that's okay. Wait until you are. What I will tell you, however, is don't believe that finding someone else will just erase the grief and pain. It doesn't. In some ways it helps, yes, but it doesn't just erase it. You still get to swim through that lake of diarrhea either way, and it also puts an added pressure on you that you may regret. I have had to balance two things, and it's not easy. The part of me that